breaking developments from Westminster as political momentum turns brutal, with Keir Starmer facing a stunning internal revolt after his own Labour MPs moved to launch a crushing no-confidence vote. This is not pressure from rivals but a full-scale uprising from within, as figures who once backed his leadership now openly reject it, with even senior voices like Sadiq Khan and King Charles reportedly distancing themselves. Parliament descended into turmoil as angry MPs confronted Starmer over what they call a historic betrayal tied to Brexit, sparking heated exchanges and scenes of disorder across the chamber. In a matter of moments, unity collapsed, and Starmer found himself isolated, battling the most serious challenge of his career from those meant to stand with him. What is unfolding is extraordinary and deeply destabilizing, marking the point where his authority began to unravel. The leader who pledged to heal divisions and rebuild trust is now witnessing his party fracture around him in real time, as Labour MPs nationwide formally initiate a no-confidence motion. This is real, unfolding now inside Westminster, with reports describing total disarray, voices raised, accusations flying, and a leader visibly shaken under pressure. Observers say Starmer lashed out verbally, pounding the table and confronting colleagues who questioned him, revealing a side never before seen. The composed image has vanished, replaced by a man struggling to hold power, as an unexpected rebellion closes in, all ignited by his highly controversial Brexit agreement, a deal now being condemned as a total reversal of everything he pledged to the British public. For years, Starmer assured voters he would honour the Brexit referendum, speaking directly to the nation and promising to protect Britain's sovereignty. He gave fishing communities firm guarantees about their livelihoods and told working families across the north that their concerns would shape the future. That confidence has now collapsed as details of the agreement emerge, sending shockwaves through Parliament. The arrangement negotiated with Brussels is accused of handing back influence over fishing access until 2038, restoring external legal oversight through the European Court of Justice, reopening pathways critics compare to unrestricted movement, and tying Britain closer to EU defence planning in ways opponents say weaken national independence. Supporters once called it a reset, critics now see it as a retreat. Inside Labour, patience has snapped. The backlash is fierce and unprecedented, driven not by outsiders but by senior MPs from strongly pro-Brexit constituencies. These are experienced lawmakers and rising figures who once viewed Starmer as the party's future, but now openly challenge his credibility. In tense meetings that quickly became public, accusations flew that he misled colleagues, failed voters, and compromised core principles for short-term advantage. One MP reportedly declared he had broken faith with everyone who placed their trust in him, while another denounced the deal as a profound failure of Labour values. The language is fierce, the frustration unmistakable, and the revolt is accelerating by the hour, made all the more staggering by how fast this crisis has unfolded. Only weeks ago, Starmer appeared firmly in control, having absorbed criticism, contained internal tensions, and held the party together. That balance shattered the moment the Brexit agreement surfaced, triggering an instant and relentless backlash. Coastal communities such as Grimsby, Hull, and Plymouth felt the impact most deeply, places that embraced Brexit as a promise of revival and protection from outside influence, only to believe their livelihoods were traded away without consultation. Local Labour branches are now openly defiant, with grassroots members demanding accountability and openly questioning their future in the party, turning political anger into something deeply personal. Inside Westminster, the mood has grown poisonous, with reports of disorder, MPs cutting off communication, alliances collapsing in real time, and quiet maneuvering filling the corridors. Starmer's inner circle is racing to limit the fallout, but the challenge has become too widespread to contain. Possible successors are already being discussed in hushed tones, with figures like Angela Rayner and Wes Streeting quietly courted by those convinced his leadership is nearing its end. As pressure mounts, Starmer is described as increasingly isolated, reacting sharply toward aides and accusing colleagues of disloyalty as his authority continues to drain away. The figure who once projected calm authority now appears cornered, battling not only to keep his role but to preserve his political future. Rivals moved swiftly to seize on the disorder, with Conservative MPs, fresh from their own divisions, suddenly united in denouncing Starmer's leadership, ridiculing Labour as a party defined by contradiction and broken trust. They point to shattered pledges as evidence he cannot be relied upon, but the sharpest pressure comes from Nigel Farage and Reform UK. Farage has mounted an unrelenting campaign, casting Starmer as the ultimate symbol of Brexit reversal, driving home a stark message that trust was broken and only reform offers an alternative. With each passing hour, Reform's polling strength rises, threatening to peel away Labour's core voters and redraw Britain's political landscape. The consequences are severe and immediate. Beyond Westminster, public anger is spilling into open action, with demonstrations taking shape nationwide as fishing communities, Brexit supporters, and disenchanted Labour voters prepare to speak out. Online platforms are erupting with calls for Starmer to step aside, spreading rapidly as former supporters voice feelings of betrayal and disregard. Confidence has collapsed, faith has been lost, and the connection between Starmer and those he claimed to represent lies fractured, perhaps beyond repair. As the no-confidence vote approaches, a single unanswered question looms over Westminster like an approaching storm. Can Starmer withstand this uprising, or has the countdown to the end of his leadership already begun? The figures remain unclear, allegiance is collapsing, and the burden of broken trust grows heavier by the minute. Yet this is only the opening chapter, because what unfolds next inside the chamber will determine not just his fate, but the future of the Labour Party itself. And if this turmoil feels like the peak, it is not, as plans taking shape behind closed doors are said to be even more dramatic than expected. The challenge to Keir Starmer has crossed a line from which there is no return. What started as quiet dissatisfaction has erupted into open political warfare, with the struggle centered deep within Labour's own ranks. Inside Westminster, anger has hardened into resolve, as MPs who once defended him now publicly demand his exit, while colleagues who stood beside him days ago quietly organize against him in late-night meetings. The loyalty that once bound the party has dissolved, replaced by a stark fight for survival, with MPs calculating their futures around the outcome of the no-confidence vote, and many concluding that Starmer is no longer part of it. The threat is direct and unmistakable, aimed at a leader who pledged unity but delivered division. The scale of the internal revolt is extraordinary, with senior allies from his rise now spearheading opposition, and shadow cabinet figures who once praised him now speaking anonymously to the press, portraying him as a risk who must be removed before he pulls the entire party down with him. Longtime backbench supporters have now stepped forward, ending years of silence with blunt interviews accusing Starmer of arrogance, misdirection, and a total refusal to hear the concerns of ordinary Labour members. The criticism is relentless and widespread, with claims that he routinely sidelined MPs, dismissed internal warnings about the Brexit agreement, and placed personal image above party unity. One senior figure reportedly told colleagues that Starmer now governs through pressure rather than respect, while another said his pursuit of authority caused him to lose sight of its purpose. As more details surface, the anger only deepens. Leaked documents show the Brussels negotiations were carried out behind closed doors, known in full only to a small inner circle, while MPs who should have been involved were deliberately excluded. When the terms finally emerged, many were stunned, seeing not compromise but retreat. The agreement goes beyond limited concessions, undoing protections Brexit was meant to secure, extending foreign access to fishing waters for another 13 years, and locking British businesses into regulatory alignment shaped elsewhere, reinforcing the sense that trust was broken at every level. Rules shaped beyond their influence now sit at the center of the backlash, with the European Court of Justice, firmly rejected by Brexit voters, given an indirect role in dispute oversight, and a youth mobility program presented in softened terms that critics warn could reopen the path to unrestricted movement. For MPs in constituencies that backed Brexit, these provisions are not middle ground but total surrender. Anger is surging across Britain's coastal and industrial heartlands, in towns such as Hartlepool, Sunderland, Grimsby, and Hull, where communities that once trusted Starmer now feel deserted. In these places, fishing is more than an industry, it is a generational lifeline, and Brexit was seen not as ideology but as survival. Families who endured years under EU limits believed departure would restore control over their waters and futures, only to feel dismissed by this agreement. That frustration is now turning into action, with Labour offices overwhelmed by demands for answers, local branches voting to formally rebuke the leadership, and petitions circulating that call for Starmer to step aside. The grassroots revolt is spreading rapidly, threatening to engulf the party from the ground up. Inside Parliament, the manoeuvring has hit a breaking point, with rival Labour factions now openly positioning themselves for what comes next, each calculating how to emerge strongest from the collapse of Starmer's authority. The soft left, hard left, moderates, and pragmatists are all circling, driven by competing visions and preferred successors. Names are whispered constantly, with Angela Rayner viewed by many as the instinctive heir, a forceful figure with deep ties to the party's working-class roots, while Wes Streeting is backed by moderates seeking a clean break from the crisis. Others point to David Lammy, Lisa Nandy, and even figures beyond the shadow cabinet who could surface as compromise choices. The scramble has grown so intense that some MPs appear more focused on the aftermath than the no-confidence vote itself, convinced the outcome is inevitable and that Starmer's time is over. Meanwhile, Starmer is described as stunned by the speed of his downfall, with allies saying he spends long hours calling on certain MPs, urging loyalty, recalling past support, and warning of repercussions, only to find his appeals increasingly ignored. The MPs who once worried about crossing him now view Starmer as a weakened figure with no authority left to enforce. His warnings brushed aside and his offers of future influence dismissed as acts of desperation. The stature he once held has drained away, replaced by a blend of sympathy and quiet disdain, as observers describe private behavior marked by sharp swings between forced resolve and visible strain under mounting pressure. Rival parties are watching the unraveling with open satisfaction. Conservative strategists are already shaping their next campaign, painting Labour as divided and unreliable, pointing to broken commitments as evidence Starmer cannot be trusted with national leadership. Reform UK is pressing even harder, using the turmoil to draw in frustrated Labour voters directly, with Nigel Farage dominating media appearances and repeating a blunt narrative that Starmer represents a reversal of Brexit's promise. That message is resonating, as polling shows Reform gaining strength in precisely the seats Labour can least afford to lose. The electoral coalition Starmer aimed to rebuild is fracturing once more, and the damage may be permanent, while beyond Britain's borders, reactions to the country's political turmoil are emerging rapidly, and with growing concern. European leaders who had tentatively welcomed Starmer's overtures are now doubting whether his government can last long enough to enforce any agreement, with Brussels diplomats reportedly stunned by the speed of his unraveling and privately lamenting negotiating with a leader unable to command his own party. Across the Atlantic, American officials watch nervously, uneasy about the stability of a crucial ally amid global uncertainty. Financial markets are reacting sharply, investors are retreating from British assets, the pound has weakened, business confidence is falling, and economists warn that prolonged political instability could inflict serious economic damage. As the countdown to the no-confidence vote nears, Westminster is gripped by tension, a palpable sense that the party's future will be irrevocably altered. Some MPs are preparing victory speeches to mark the end of Starmer's leadership, others are drafting resignations, eager to abandon a sinking ship before it drags them under. And in the eye of the storm, Starmer sits isolated, watching the collapse of a career built on promises of integrity, honesty, and a new political vision, now reduced to ruins by his own choices and the betrayal of those once closest to him. But the crisis is far from over, because when the votes are finally tallied, the shockwave will reverberate through British politics in ways no one is ready for, and what follows could be even more unsettling than the chaos that led here. The moment of reckoning has arrived. Inside the House of Commons, MPs file into the chamber with stone-faced resolve, each bearing the weight of a decision that will shape the party, and the country, for years. The no-confidence vote against Starmer is no longer theoretical, it is happening now, and the tension is nearly suffocating. Journalists packed into the press gallery describe an atmosphere unlike any they have witnessed, no chatter, no last-minute deals, only a heavy, oppressive silence occasionally punctuated by the shuffle of papers or the creak of wooden benches. Starmer sits on the front bench, pale, jaw tight, hands gripping the seat as if for survival, a man who once exuded confidence now appearing trapped, isolated and desperate. Colleagues who were once allies avoid his gaze, leaving him utterly alone. The speeches that precede the vote are merciless, each word landing like a blade. A Labour backbencher from the north rises to denounce him, accusing Starmer of betraying the working people who trusted him, invoking fishermen who believed Brexit would secure their futures, only to see them handed back to Brussels without resistance. Her voice trembles with emotion as she declares she can no longer back a leader who treats ordinary people as pawns in political games. Another veteran MP rises, decades of experience lending weight to his words, confessing he has never felt more ashamed of his party. He brands the Brexit deal a surrender cloaked in diplomacy, a capitulation disguised as cooperation, warning that if Starmer survives this vote, Labour faces electoral devastation from which it may never recover. The criticisms mount relentlessly, each accusation sharper than the last. Starmer sits motionless, absorbing every blow, his face fixed in a mask of strained composure. When he finally stands to speak, the chamber plunges into even deeper silence. Slowly adjusting his jacket, he scans a sea of hostile faces, searching for words that might undo weeks of political damage. His usually steady voice falters as he defends the Brexit deal, insisting it safeguards British interests, that compromise is not betrayal, and that true leadership sometimes demands unpopular choices. But the words fall flat among MPs whose minds are made up. Cheers of defiance interrupt him, shouts of resignation ring from the backbench, and one voice declares he should be ashamed to call himself Labour leader. Desperation creeping into his tone, he presses on, but the tide has turned, and nothing can reverse it. The vote is called, MPs stream through the lobbies, each step echoing like a drumbeat counting down to judgment, while outside, thousands of protesters gather, their anger swelling with every passing moment.